Mishpacha means family, and I'm hoping that if you're not already our family, Mishpacha, of Comfort My People, that you will consider that, because this is where I speak from. The message of Comfort My People is a supportive message. It's a message of good news because it's biblical to comfort my people. Isaiah 40, verse 1 and 2 is what we take our commission from, because God's called us in that way. In fact, it's an appeal, and some say it's even a command because God repeats it. But unfortunately, it's not even the place of forgetting. You know, we forget things easily. I'm great at forgetting. But you can only forget things that you once knew. Once something you learned or experiences are the things that you can forget. If you never learned or experienced, then there's nothing to forget. So I'm not trying to remind you of something, but hopefully inform you of something, because today is a day of remembrance. It'll never be forgotten in the history of Israel, especially modern history beginning in 1948 when Israel became a nation. There's never been a day like it a year ago from today. So I want to talk from that aspect, but there's another thing that as Bible believers we cannot also forget, is that when God gave the Jewish people through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the blessing has many aspects to it. The cursing has very few aspects to it. It's a kind and kind response from the God of all creation to the way people treat the Jewish people. He's always done it. He's kept his word. He's faithful. A lot of things that we forget is things that we never fully learned. And in Hebrews chapter 6, which is I should say almost never, because in my history it's been a never, taught from. And I'm curious about that. Romans 11 is another one. And even Ephesians 2 and 3 in a specific aspect, which is the literal translations of the words. It's not either is it taught that way. Now, people will get on my case for that, and I'm not going to go into detail. But some of the things we remember are not true. And one of those things that is remembered is that when God gave Abraham a blessing, it was for the benefit of the nations. The families of the earth were supposed to be benefited through the people of faith, which, beginning with Abraham, were supposed to bring into the nations. And in many ways, the Israelites failed. And by the time of Jesus' arrival into the planet through Israel, they had really lost their way considerably. So it has to be restored because it's something that was taught. It has to be remembered. And unfortunately, that blessing got translated into physical aspects like medical technology, innovation, and now even military technology and military know-how. So through what Israel's done in the physical sense has been a blessing to the nations to use for your own benefits. So obviously, if there's cancer treatments that have been discovered by Israeli scientists, it's for the benefit in the entire world. And so there's many aspects of that. But the spiritual aspect of blessing translated into light, biblically, through Isaiah especially, that the Jews were intended to be a light to the nations. Nations in Hebrew is goyim. Goyim literally means Gentiles, but Gentiles literally means nations. It's all the same word. So it's not a bad word, it's just what it means. So people get caught up in the word Goya, or Goyim, or Goy, thinking it's Jews cursing them. It isn't, it's just a distinction. So the spiritual aspect is something that only believers can really receive and then give out, extend, like Abraham was commanded to you bring this blessing into the nations that surround you. Now, the nations that surround Israel are out to kill them, destroy them completely. 0.2% of the land mass of the whole entire Middle East is Israel. 0.2% of the entire world population is Israel. So you got this tiny population trying to be a blessing to a huge population, and they don't want anything to do with it. So what do you do with it? You internalize it, and that's not right. So right now, in the land of Israel, there are believers, both Arab and believers, that are coming together uniting, seeing that it's time. We cannot escape the moment we're in history, all this turmoil, all this anxiety and anguish and hostility that's been returned after so many years, restored. We need to deal with this. We need to unfold it, and we need to bring healing to the nation, not only the nation of Israel, but to the nations that surround Israel. And it's going to be through believers. And this is what our partners are doing. This is what our partners are not just Jewish partners reaching Jewish people. They're Messianic believers, which means they believe Yeshua is the Messiah. Whether you're an Arab, a Palestinian, Ethiopian, or an Iranian, they're believing God for his promises and extending that blessing into the nations. So they're gathering together more and more, and they feel this intensive sense of strategic meetings, which are very exciting. I was inviting to one in the near future, and I can't even tell location, but I don't know if I'll be able to make it. But I am so supportive of it because this is the real heart of peace. And here's what's often forgotten is that the facts are not clear. Israel did not start this war a year ago today. They didn't. They were invaded by barbaric invaders. Think of the Dark Ages. Think of ancient history, centuries and centuries ago, when nations or cultures were considered totally uncivilized. That's who came and invaded Israel on this day. So Israel wasn't even prepared for it, so couldn't defend themselves right away. So the barbarism got far worse than even the initial day. It was things that are unspeakable. And the pain and the emotional trauma that's gone in for people, not the ones necessarily that were taken hostage, the ones that are still there, we don't have their stories, but the ones that escaped becoming hostages are still living under the trauma of that day because of the horrid nature of laying on the ground in a bush, underneath a bush, with 2 or 3 bodies laying on top of you and not breathing when you hear these militant Islamic extremists out to kill you. They hear gunfire all over the place. This is part of it that's never been spoken about because it's not that it's forgotten, but there's nothing to remember. So the narrative has so changed over that time that all the streets of America, all the city streets, and many of the college campuses, if not most of them, have been just emerging with hatred towards Israel and the Jewish people. Why? Because they make up another narrative. And so I'm encouraging you in this time not just to remember things, because I know that many don't even know what happened. And I'll give you one more example before I close. The Oslo Accord was this attempt at peace in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians. It was celebrated because Yasser Arafat was an artist at deception. Bill Clinton was our president. Obviously, he wanted to accomplish something that no other president accomplished, and that is peace. They're always doing that. They think they're going to do that again. So they came up with this 2-piece solution that was just perfect. Signed, sealed, delivered. Everyone clapped, gave applause. The headlines were everywhere. President Clinton, etc., etc. Yasser Arafat, he gets his face on the Man of the Year in Time magazine because of this sacrificial peace treaty that was never, ever agreed to from the Arab side. Never. But yet the applause was there, the acclamations were there, but nothing ever came of it. And so why is it still something that we want to repeat? We don't want to repeat, but the governments of the world, all of them are like pressurizing Israel to go ahead with this preparation for a 2-state solution. It's impossible. It would be a full sense of extinction to the Jewish people. That's the only thing that the Muslim world would agree to. Palestinians specifically, all these terrorist groups that are supported by them. So what do we remember? What do we remember? What we do remember is that not only is God good, but he's given us something to remember by. When the Abrahamic blessing showed up, the first fruit of that blessing was a son. God promised him he would give him a son. He promised him from his son would come more children, descendants, and they would be like the stars of the sky, and they would always be a people. So if you see Jews anywhere, that's a result of God's promise. It's a part of his blessing that he made to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants, and that they are capable, because they're infused with the DNA, to bring a blessing. But that DNA has to be lit. It has to be ignited by the Spirit of the living God, Ruach HaKodesh. The Spirit of Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah, has to light up that blessing. And that's why we support our partners. Isaac, the firstborn, the first fruit of the blessing, his name means laughter. Why did God choose laughter? He told Abraham his descendants are going to go into 4 centuries of slavery. That was when he gave him the same blessing. He said, that's nothing to laugh about. But he gave him that because he knew there was a future beyond the grave, beyond slavery, beyond captivity. And this is where the promise lies. This is where the hope lies, because of the remembrance of what God had promised. So the promise is that God will make them always a people. He will bless them. And this is what we're praying for, hoping for, and believing for. And this is why we don't have to literally fall apart. We don't have to be moaning and groaning and complaining. We have hope. And that hope even can bring laughter in the midst of sorrow. Another one of the names was Asher, a descendant of Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and his 12 sons were the recipients of this blessing. What does Asher mean? It means blessed. It means happy. So Asher is a blessing and a happiness. Isaac is laughter. Do you think the world no longer needs laughter? It no longer needs to be happy? When you get rid of the Jewish people, that's literally what you're getting rid of. Those names represent huge concepts that humanity is starving for. So think about that. If you never knew it, now you can remember it. Not just on this day, which is going to be known for years to come, but on every day. You got to remember what God's doing in Israel. Israel, and I hear this often from our friends in Israel, they feel that the church has left them behind, forgot about them. Yeah, people say, no, we're so pro-Israel. That's what they feel, they think, they discern. So whatever that is, if they're wrong, show them how wrong they are. But first you got to know the truth, because the truth, it will always be what sets people free. Shalom, shalom.